So I did take early retirement, beginning at 62, phased retirement, and now I'm fully retired at 64. And I had a plan. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed teaching at TRU for 34 years, but I needed more time and energy to work on some projects that weren't completed. So I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I finished some screenwriting projects and some children's book projects, and also have gotten into composing and writing songs with my son Ben. So that's been a lot of fun as well. Yes, so I was in a band called Intensive Care back in high school a long time ago, and it was only a brief thing for maybe a couple of years. Some of the other musicians went on to professional careers in music, but I didn't. And so I really hadn't done anything in music aside from singing for a long time. But I wrote a screenplay called Boomerangst, which is a story about some folks who get together at a high school reunion and reform their band called Intensive Care, and they form a retirement commune, and it's threatened by a multinational mining company, so they have to come together, reunite their band to raise money to fight this multinational mining company. So I wrote that as a screenplay, and then we decided to do it as a stage play here in Kamloops because it was quite relevant to Kamloops because there was a threat from a multinational mining company that has a huge tract of land just south of Kamloops. So, but the thing was, I wrote this screenplay and play, and I didn't have any music for the band to play. And so at first I thought, well, I'll use some protest songs from the 1960s or 70s, but I couldn't find anything that I really thought was appropriate. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to write my own songs. And luckily, my son Ben is a multi-talented musician. So the way that we do it is that I come up with the lyrics first, because I am a writer, and come up with a tune in my head, and then I sit down with Ben and we tinker with the tune, and he elaborates it and develops it on the guitars and using drums. So the first song that we did was called Climate Crisis, and that one is just what it sounds like in the title. It's all about climate deniers, and it's a protest song, but it's also hopeful. And we first recorded it right up in the bedroom there in the house, and then Ben recorded it on a computer that he had, and then we professionally recorded it eventually because it was one of the songs for Boomerangst, and we weren't sure whether the actors would be able to perform the songs in the play. So as a safety thing, we decided to record the songs so that maybe they could lip sync the songs if they weren't able to sing. But it turned out that they actually managed to be both actors and performers, so that worked out. But we did record several of the songs anyway. And so Climate Crisis has gone around the world in film festivals. It's been awarded Best Environmental Music Video in England and Paris, and it's been in film festivals in Sweden and India and the United States and Canada here, of course. So that's what I was hoping for, because I wanted to get the message out, and so we managed to do that, and it's still getting selected for film festivals. The latest one is the World Water Film Festival, which is in New York and various places, including the Middle East, which I thought was interesting. So, and that'll be this coming year. It'll be going all over the place. So I'm really happy about that. And then I just decided to keep doing songs because we enjoyed it so much, and there's so many talented musicians here in Kamloops. And we've got a great sound producer, Doug Perry at Perry Studios. So yeah, I've started doing more, mainly because there are a lot of issues that just aren't being dealt with in songs, and songs can reach people in a much different way than anything I could write. They just, if you have a catchy tune and so on, then people will listen and hopefully be moved by the message, and hopefully it'll, help make people aware of whatever the issue is. And people say, well, Canada's in debt too, but it's all relative, and our debt is nothing compared to the poorest countries in the world that they can't even pay the interest on the loans that they have. And There's a climate justice issue as well because they can't afford to cope with climate disasters, and their education system and their healthcare suffers because they're trying to pay the interest on these loans. So it's quite dire. And so how I got into that was, well, I belong to the United Church. I'm the Global and Community Action Coordinator at the United Church in town here. So I went to the G7 People's Forum in Calgary, just ahead of the G7 this past June. And there were people from all around the world at the People's Forum, and the main topic was debt cancellation. And this happened once before. It's called a Jubilee year, and the first one was in 2000. And at that time, $130 billion of debt was canceled. So it was successful. It's not just a pipe dream. And so this is 25 years later, and they're well on their way to achieving that kind of level of debt cancellation again. So I actually started writing the lyrics for Turn Dead into Hope while I was at that conference because I was so inspired. And we did a street performance of a play that I didn't write, but I kind of modified it. And it was shut down by the police in Calgary. And so we had to finish it at City Hall in Calgary. Anyway, I wrote the lyrics there, and then Ben helped me in a motorhome in the Kootenays, which is where he was at the time. We worked out some of the music there, and then finally got around to recording it in March here in Kamloops. And I wrote that for an NGO called Kairos, which is one of the organizations spearheading the debt cancellation campaign in Canada. So it's gone on their YouTube site, and hopefully it'll make people more aware of this debt crisis that these countries, many of them in Africa, some of them in South America, a few in Asia, Myanmar and places like that, Pakistan, that they're facing. So that was the purpose of it, and I think we've done what we set out to do. And we played it at the local, the 50th annual Rally for Peace, Social Justice, and the Environment, which was last weekend, and people enjoyed that. So I've been involved in that rally for probably 10 years, but it's been going for 50 years, which is quite impressive for a city the size of Kamloops. So the songs I've written so far there's been several for that play and screenplay, Boomerangs, but I think with those tend to be social justice. I've only really written social justice type songs so far anyway. So if I have a social justice topic that I think hasn't been covered in song, then that's an obvious, that genre sort of is there to use. And I feel like songs, as I said, are powerful and can get the message across. And I'm inspired, by people like, Neil Young and Bob Dylan, obviously, who are great protest song writers. With the children's books, I mean, many of those first came about when our children were small. And so I kept a notebook of stories, and I would tell them stories at bedtime and that kind of thing. And so those ones also were fairly obvious as far as what genre to use, because they were stories that I told the children. With the plays and screenplays, again, I've written a variety of things, but I tend to choose stories that wouldn't otherwise be heard or told. And a good example is a play that I wrote called Maucus, which is inspired by a green politician, a very innovative politician from Colombia called Antonis Maucus, who was a philosopher and a mathematician at the National University in Bogota. And he rose to fame or infamy, depending on your perspective, when he was addressing a bunch of arts students at the university there. Got so frustrated with them that he turned around and he mooned the students. And he became famous, and so he decided to run for mayor of Bogota. And he got elected in 1995, I think, the first time. And what he did is he treated the city as a social experiment. And so he used, performance art and lots of innovative techniques to turn the city around, because in the 90s, Bogota was a crime-ridden, drug-ridden city. So he used playful things like, for example, he replaced 400 traffic cops who were taking bribes and were corrupt, fired them all, and hired mimes to direct traffic. That's the kind of thing he did. It was just incredible. And he had thumbs up and thumbs down signs so that he gave out to people. And so if you saw somebody littering or something like that, you just held up a thumbs down sign. And if you saw somebody doing something positive, like helping someone across the street, you gave them a thumbs up sign, so you didn't actually confront them directly. Thought it was brilliant. And he also closed off the inner city for pedestrians and that sort of thing in the 90s, way before that was done elsewhere. And he then ran for president of Colombia as a Green candidate, and he had many young people supporting him. It was called the Green Wave in Colombia, but the election was corrupt, and so he didn't get elected, unfortunately. But the man who did get elected eventually won the Nobel Peace Prize, which Antonis Maukis should have won. So amazing man, and I was just so inspired by him as a politician because he did things so quickly, brought about positive change. And it's a story that, up here in North America, we definitely wouldn't have heard about it unless I wrote it. And I didn't write a biography because I don't have the rights to his life, but I wrote an expressionist play and set it as a circus, a three-ring circus, the political, the personal, and the social. And the character, the mayor, moves from one sphere to another as in a three-ring circus. So it was a lot of fun and involved clowns and all that kind of thing. So yeah, so I try and find stories that are unknown and need to be told. Another example, Canadian example, is I've done a screenplay with my friend Cameron Grant on Tom Thompson, I think our greatest painter. And the thing about Tom Thompson is, when in my generation, we were all taught about Tom Thompson in school, maybe even in grade school, but it was a very kind of, clean version of Tom Thompson. He was a great painter and so on. You didn't really learn much about his private life. And we discovered that he was, a supreme anti-hero in so many ways, just a rebel. For example, I believe that he was a pacifist and refused to enter into the First World War, even though some of his friends like A.Y. Jackson became First World War painters, official painters. But Tom instead went into the wilderness in Algonquin, where he was sadly killed in 1917. And we have a pretty good idea who actually killed him, but we can't, say that for certain. So it's a speculative ending in that film. But anyway, it's telling a different story about Tom Thompson than the sort of traditional view of him as a genius painter, but it doesn't get into his personal life. So that's another example. Yeah, I've talked to some people and they say they go through a period of just exhaustion, and I'm lucky that because I did the phased retirement, I didn't feel that at the end, and I was looking forward to retiring, even though, as I say, I loved teaching for 34 years at TRU, but I had all these ideas, and so yeah, it's really just let me loose, and I've been able to finish projects and revise projects, and yeah, just go from one thing to another, different genres when I please. I don't have to work it in between, my course schedule and marking and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a lot of fun. It's more flexible, obviously, than when I have a routine like teaching and so on. So. Mm-hmm.